What's up, everyone? This is Lucas Ross Sports, and you're watching my Lucas Ross Sports channel, and it's time for my top 4 college football playoff standings after week number 6 of the 2022 college football season. Not a big change, only a big change I think this week is to the number 4 seed. We got a new team in this, top 4 standing list. We got a new number 1 seed. Looking back to last weekend, the teams that played pretty much, Alabama played, not really consistently against Texas A&M. And basically how this, standings works, I will give you the top 4 best teams from last weekend. And this is simply based off of how the teams played. It's simply how the teams based, how they played last weekend against their opponents. But we'll get right to it here. We start with, the games here. Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl, it will be the number 1 versus number 4 seed matchup. And then the number 2 versus number 3 seed will be the Fiesta Bowl. So the Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl, we'll start with that one. We have a new number 1 seed. It was pretty tough to, figure out who the number 1 seed I should choose from this week. And I'm going to pick Ohio State. I think Ohio State deserves to be number 1. They're ranked number 2 in the AP poll. If you saw my top 25 update video this past Monday where I updated the AP Top 25 poll and gave my thoughts on it. Ohio State, this is one of the most dangerous offense in the country. They're coming off a big-time blowout win against Michigan State. Took care of business in the last 2 games, against the Rutgers and then, of course, Michigan State last weekend. Looking at the schedule for Ohio State, they still have to play Penn State and then Michigan. That good news is you get that game at home for Michigan. Penn State, though, it will be a little bit tougher, but I think Ohio State, this is one of the most dangerous offenses in the country, and that's why they deserve to be number 1. They're coming off some big couple wins, and I think that's why Ohio State deserves number 1. And C.J. Stroud, like as always, is just one of the most explosive quarterbacks in the country as well, and maybe the best quarterback in the Big Ten Conference. Let's go to the number 2 seed in the Fiesta Bowl. We have a new change here as well, and that's going to be Georgia. Georgia was ranked last week at number 3, I believe, on my top 4 standings list because they just weren't performing that well in their last 2 games. Kent State was a tough one, Missouri was a tough one, but this past weekend against Auburn, this looked like the Georgia team from week number 1, where they completely dominated against Oregon, and I think they do deserve to be back at number 2 here, so they will be playing in the Fiesta Bowl. And also, this is simply not a prediction, this is simply a projection based on how the teams played last weekend, if these games were to happen the next weekend. And basically, if you saw my preseason predictions, I had Alabama, Ohio State, Utah, which is pretty much out of the picture now. And then I had, of course, Georgia at number 4. But Georgia at number 2 here this week. I think they deserve a lot of credit after that win over Auburn this past weekend. And Georgia's rolling right now. Not much to talk about them other than the offense is just being explosive. They get an easy matchup this weekend with Vanderbilt, so not a big problem there for Georgia. And who will play Georgia in the Fiesta Bowl in this game if this game were to happen? The number 3 seed was pretty tough to call, but Alabama is number 3. They moved down from number 1 to number 3. I put Alabama at number 1 last weekend, but based on the performance this past weekend against Texas A&M, I had to move them back down to number 3. Yes, I know Bryce Young was out, but Alabama should have probably dominated the game, more explosiveness. But Alabama, though, they're ranked number 3 in this top 4 standings list. So they'll play Georgia in the Fiesta Bowl. And Alabama, you look at their schedule ahead of them, they have to play Tennessee this Saturday, which is going to be the biggest game coming up this weekend. If Bryce Young plays in that game, I could see Alabama, winning that one. But if Bryce Young don't play, Alabama might lose. You never know. With Bryce Young at quarterback, they could still lose the game no matter what. But Alabama, though, they've been on the road before, so, they shouldn't really have too big of problems, but, if they make a lot of mistakes in this game, Tennessee's going to win the game, regardless. But, Alabama is in my upset alert video if you watched that yesterday. Pretty much, Alabama is on the upset alert video, so, go back and watch that video. Alabama, though, they're number 3. They will play Georgia in the Fiesta Bowl if this game were to happen. In the Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl, who will Ohio State play? as the number 4 seed. And this one was obviously a tough one to call, but they have been performing pretty well for the last couple of weeks. I'm going with the ACC. I'm going with Clemson here at number 4. Now, Michigan was ranked last weekend here in the top 4, but I know Michigan, their offense has been really good, but defensively, they're also pretty good. But I think Clemson has performed much better than Michigan in the past couple weeks. You look at Michigan, ever since they got into Big Ten play, it's been pretty tough, for Michigan, to score some points, in the 50s and all that. But Clemson took care of business in their game against Boston College, took care of business against NC State. So they're coming off 3 big wins, with Wake Forest and then, NC State, and then this past weekend against Boston College. DJ Ogilvy is getting better at quarterback. I'm starting to see him a little bit as a Heisman contender perhaps, but not quite there. But he was one of my top 10 quarterbacks heading into 2022, and he's lived up to that, expectation for that team. So Clemson right there at number 4. Now we get to the predictions here. If these games were to happen, let's start with the Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl first. It's Ohio State versus Clemson. I'm going to go say Ohio State wins this game. I just think the defense is just much stronger than Clemson's. Yes, Clemson's defense is pretty strong, but I think offensively, if you give, the advantage here, it's going to go to Ohio State regardless. So I'm picking the Buckeyes to win this one. And you look at Ohio State and Clemson's matchups in the past semifinals, they have been really close. They've both been pretty close in the last few seasons. And Ohio State, I think, will defeat Clemson here just because of the offense. I mean, the offense is pretty explosive. The defense is a lot better than last year as well. So I'm going to pick the Buckeyes to win that game. Georgia versus Alabama in the Fiesta Bowl. Who do I think will win this game? It's obviously a tough one. I mean, Georgia obviously has the better offense a little bit. But if I was going to say, based off of the team's performances last weekend, Georgia had the better win. I'm going to say that Georgia beats, Alabama in this game. The Fiesta Bowl will be theirs. And I think Georgia does win in a shootout type game. But it will be close. It will be close no matter what. But I think Georgia does come out on top. And then we have Ohio State versus Georgia in the national championship game. And I already picked Ohio State to win this one. Not easily, but I think Ohio State's offense is just more explosive than Georgia's. You look at both of these offenses, they're pretty even. I mean, based on last weekend, though, I had to go with Ohio State. I think they had the better offensive performance against Michigan State. Look, I know Michigan State is terrible, and also Auburn is terrible. I mean, they both played, pretty terrible teams last weekend. But Ohio State, I think, is just a much more dangerous offense than Georgia's. And I got Ohio State winning the national championship here if this game were to happen. But give me your thoughts on these top 4 playoff standings. And also subscribe to the Lucas Ross Sports channel if you are new here. We are gaining a lot of subscribers over the course of the months on this channel. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports channel.